What's up guys, this is a new series I am starting covering the lore of each 5 Nights at Freddy's game up to custom night for now. I have not played the newer games, but if I at some point play them I will make videos about them too. For now enjoy the first episode in the series, which is 5 Nights at Freddy's 1. 5 Nights at Freddy's, when looked at only on the surface, appears to be a simple survival horror game about a night guard trying to endure a week in a rundown family restaurant. However, beneath that minimal gameplay is a dense and unsettling narrative told almost entirely through implication, environmental storytelling, and subtext. The lore of the first game is deliberately fragmented, forcing the player to piece together the truth from phone messages, newspaper clippings, character behavior, and the very mechanics of survival. This indirect approach is what gives the story its lasting power, because the horror does not come from jump scares alone, but from the slow realization that something deeply wrong has happened in this place long before the player ever arrived. Before we dive deeper, please consider subscribing, it helps me out a lot. It only takes a few seconds. Please enjoy. The setting is Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a once popular children's restaurant built around cheerful animatronic mascots meant to entertain families. By the time the game begins, the restaurant is clearly in decline. The building feels abandoned, the technology is outdated, and the atmosphere is suffocatingly lonely. This decay mirrors the moral rot at the core of the establishment. Newspaper clippings reveal that several children went missing at the restaurant years earlier after being lured away by someone wearing a mascot costume. Though the culprit was reportedly caught, the restaurant's reputation was permanently damaged. The casual way these events are presented is disturbing in itself, as the game never dramatizes the crime. Instead, it treats it like a grim footnote, reinforcing the idea that corporate negligence and quiet cover-ups allowed the tragedy to be buried rather than resolved. The animatronics are the most important carriers of the game's lore. On the surface, they are malfunctioning robots that wander at night due to outdated programming, but their behavior goes far beyond mechanical error. They stalk the player with intent, react to observation, and coordinate their movements as if driven by something conscious. The explanation given by the phone calls, that they confuse adults for endoskeletons and attempt to stuff them into suits, feels deliberately inadequate. It sounds like a sanitized corporate excuse, designed to rationalize something far more supernatural. The implication is that these machines are not merely broken, but possessed, animated by the restless spirits of the murdered children, whose deaths were never properly acknowledged or avenged. The idea of possession is reinforced by subtle visual details, most notably the rare hallucinations of ghostly faces and the haunting phrase, "It's me," that occasionally appears. This message is never explained within the game, but its personal tone suggests recognition, as though one of the trapped spirits believes the night guard is someone they know. This opens the door to one of the most unsettling interpretations of the story, that the player character may have a deeper connection to the tragedy than initially assumed. While the game never confirms this outright, the ambiguity invites the player to question their role, blurring the line between victim and participant in the restaurant's dark history. The phone calls themselves are another critical storytelling device. The man on the phone is calm, friendly, and disturbingly casual about the danger the player faces. He represents the corporate mindset that prioritizes liability avoidance over human life. His scripted instructions feel rehearsed, as though countless guards have come before and met the same fate. As the nights progress, his tone subtly shifts, and by the final calls, there is an undercurrent of fear that suggests even he is not immune to the consequences of the restaurant's past. His eventual disappearance implies that the cycle of death continues, claiming even those who believe themselves safely detached from the horror. One of the most important themes in 5 Nights at Freddy's is containment. The children's souls are trapped inside the animatronics, unable to move on, while the truth of their murders is trapped behind corporate silence and legal technicalities. The night guard is trapped in the office, limited by power and rigid rules, mirroring the entrapment of the spirits themselves. Even the restaurant is trapped in a state of decay, unable to fully close or move forward, yet still operating as if nothing is wrong. This sense of being stuck creates a feeling of existential dread that goes beyond simple fear of death, suggesting that the real horror lies in unresolved guilt and forgotten victims. By the end of the game, there is no clear resolution. Surviving all 5 nights does not bring justice, closure, or peace. Instead, the player is fired for trivial reasons, such as odor and tampering with the animatronics, a darkly ironic conclusion that reinforces how little human life and suffering matter to the company. The evil is not destroyed, only temporarily endured. This lack of catharsis is intentional, leaving the player with lingering questions and a sense that the story is far from over. In this way, Five Nights at Freddy's uses minimal dialogue and simple mechanics to tell a story about exploitation, neglect, and the consequences of burying the truth. The horror is not just that the animatronics want to kill you, but that they are victims themselves, driven by pain and confusion in a world that treated them as disposable. The game's lore transforms a small security office into a symbolic courtroom where the past demands to be acknowledged, and survival becomes less about skill and more about enduring the weight of unspoken tragedy. A deeper layer of interpretation emerges when the possible identity of the Night Guard is examined, particularly the theory that he is Michael Afton. Although the first game never names its protagonist outright, the behavior of the animatronics, the cryptic messages, and the thematic structure of the story strongly suggest that the guard may not be a random employee, but someone returning to the restaurant for personal reasons. If the guard is Michael Afton, the experience of the game shifts from a story about an unlucky worker to one about guilt, atonement, and confrontation with the consequences of family sins. This interpretation reframes nearly every aspect of the narrative, giving emotional weight to moments that otherwise seem purely mechanical. Michael Afton, as a possible protagonist, fits disturbingly well into the environment of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He would be the son of the man responsible for the murders, someone who grew up in the shadow of the restaurant and its secrets. His presence there would not be accidental but deliberate, suggesting that he is searching for something, whether that be answers, punishment, or redemption. This could explain why he continues working despite the extreme danger and low pay, enduring conditions that no rational person would accept. From this perspective, surviving the nights is not just a job requirement, but a form of self-imposed penance, as if Michael believes he deserves to suffer for what his family caused. The phrase "it's me" takes on a much more personal meaning if Michael is indeed the guard. Rather than being a generic haunting message, it could be the voices of the dead children recognizing him as connected to their killer. They may not fully understand who he is, but they sense familiarity, confusing him with his father or associating him with the same guilt. This tragic misunderstanding would explain the animatronics' aggression, as they are not driven purely by hatred, but by pain and confusion. They are lashing out at the closest thing they have to the one who destroyed their lives, while Michael is forced to endure their attacks, knowing he is paying for crimes he did not personally commit, yet cannot fully escape. Michael's possible identity also casts the animatronics' behavior in a more symbolic light. If he is the son of the murderer, then the haunted machines represent the physical manifestation of his family's sins coming back to confront him. Each night becomes a trial, with the animatronics acting as both executioners and witnesses. The office, sealed off and monitored, resembles a confessional or a prison cell, where Michael is isolated with nothing but his thoughts, the flickering cameras, and the approaching consequences of the past. His limited power supply reinforces this idea, as his survival depends on restraint and endurance rather than aggression, mirroring the idea that redemption cannot be forced but must be endured. The ending of the game becomes especially bleak when viewed through this lens. Michael is fired not for failing to do his job, but for trivial and humiliating reasons, such as odor and tampering with the animatronics. This suggests physical and psychological decay, as though the restaurant itself is rejecting him, refusing to allow closure. There is no recognition of his suffering or his intent, only cold bureaucracy. If Michael hoped that facing the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza would bring some form of peace or forgiveness, the ending makes it clear that such resolution is impossible. The system that enabled the murders remains indifferent, and the dead remain unrested. Ultimately, viewing Michael Afton as the possible protagonist deepens the tragedy at the heart of Five Nights at Freddy's. The story becomes less about surviving killer robots and more about inheriting guilt, being punished for the sins of a parent, and attempting to do the right thing in a world that offers no clear path to redemption. The horror lies not only in the animatronics, glowing eyes, or sudden attacks, but in the realization that the past cannot be undone, only confronted. If Michael truly is the guard, then the game is the beginning of a long, painful journey toward atonement, one that starts not with heroism, but with silent endurance in a dark office where the echoes of lost children refuse to fade. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching.